I have a lot of stories about attempting to help with NGOs, attempting to volunteer my time and services and kind of hitting roadblocks. But when I was in my 20s, I started playing music in bands. And for whatever reason, that seemed to be an easier open path for me. I was able to start creative projects with other people, record music, and tour. And that was my life before I started ceramics, before I found clay. I did not find clay until I was in my mid 30s. And so at that time, I was living in New Orleans, Louisiana. I was, like I said, a musician, and I was also working service industry jobs to pay for my life. I never thought of being a musician as a way to generate income. It was just my passion. And so I had other jobs to help me finance my life while I was doing what I really cared about. When I was about 34, 35 years old, one of my coworkers mentioned to me that he was taking a ceramics class at a new clay studio in New Orleans. And so I took my first class when I was 34 years old, and I fell in love with it. And within 2 years, I began selling my work online and in person. And it took a while for that to become my main income stream. But that is what it is today. So at the time, not only was I working service industry, but I was also teaching elementary school art lessons and doing other things part-time. And slowly but surely, over a course of a few years, I was able to make the selling of my pottery my main income. So I would like, if you have any questions at any time, you can drop them in the chat below.
Mhm.
And you can also interrupt me. I would love to see who I'm talking to, but I understand not everybody wants to be on camera. But I am going to share with you now kind of my trajectory in terms of making pottery, making a living from making and selling pottery. All right, so last year I did a workshop called Artist as Entrepreneur. And so that's what I'm going to share with you guys. Can everybody see this? So, well, actually, you know what? At first I will begin with just showing you what my work looks like.
Right.
And I'll just use Instagram to do that. So I make mostly functional pottery, um, things for people to use in their homes. I do participate in gallery shows every so often, but my main focus is making work that I can sell directly to my collectors without the intermediary of the gallery. And so interpersonal interactions and relationships are kind of the cornerstone of my business. And social media has been a great help in contacting people, getting my work known, and just interacting with people, just speaking to people. So you can see this is an urn that I made, a cremation urn that I made back in 2020. The two pots on top here are my work. The two on the bottom are by a potter named David McDonald, who I hope you please write down his name if you're not familiar with him.
Mhm.
He was a ceramics professor at Syracuse University in Syracuse, New York for over 40 years. And we are teaching a workshop together at Harvard Ceramics in Boston in April. His name is David McDonald, MacDonald. So these are my pots up above. Another small urn in a covered dish. Oh, sorry. This is a serving bowl that I made. I'm using red clay, and I'm firing in an electric kiln to cone 6. So I use all mid-range materials. I make my own glazes based on recipes that I found either in books or online. So these are basically the interior and exterior of
Mhm.
each dish. They're probably about this big, serving bowl size. A lot of my work is inspired by the natural environment. So what I would say is I am an American studio potter. I use the wheel, I use an electric kiln. But what I'm trying to do is bring a West African sensibility to my craft and to my practice. And I'm also inspired by the natural environment around me. I now live in Florida, Sarasota, Florida, where we're surrounded by the beach. And so the experience of living by open waters has definitely affected my expression in my studio practice and the work that I produce. That's just a picture of me in my studio. That's the urn that I made. These are some mugs that I sent to a gallery called Good Earth Pottery in Washington State. That was actually me working alongside a South African potter named Jabu Nala. I would like you to write down her name as well if you don't know who she is. She is a Zulu potter from South Africa who makes traditional and contemporary work. Her name is Jabulile, so that's G-A-B-I-L. Wait, hang on. G-A-B-U-L-I-L-E. And Nala is her last name, N-A-L-A. And her family is a famous family in the Zulu pottery tradition. Her mother's name is Nesta, N-E-S-T-A, Nala.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jabu had learned her craft from her family. And so when I say that I consider myself an American studio potter, I mean that I am totally fine using the electric wheel and electric kiln, but that I need experiences such as this to learn the traditional ways of making, to inspire and inform my practice. Okay, so I think that gives you a little bit of an overview.
Mm-hmm.
That's another serving bowl I made, just so you can see. Okay, so going to the business side of things. So how to make a living. So the first thing I want to say is that, so
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
does anybody have any questions for me at this point? Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that there is no one path. Oh, I'm going to need everybody to mute their microphones, please, because I'm hearing some background noise and it's distracting. And let me check the chat here. I see there's, okay, David McDonald, somebody just wrote down. Thank you. Okay. There are so many different ways to make a living with ceramics. And a lot of it depends on what you are making. So what I'm telling you applies to my experience as a potter, making items that people can use in their homes. The advice that you would get to someone making conceptual work or installations or large scale work will definitely be different. The other thing I want to say is, speaking of my friend, David McDonald, like I said, he made his living as a professor for 40 years, and he prefers it that way. When we talk on the phone, he always tells me that he prefers being a person who goes into the studio because he wants to, not because he has to. Meaning he does not want to feel the pressure of making a living when he's making ceramic work. So the first thing I want to tell everybody is that if you decide to make a living as a ceramicist, as a studio artist, that you need to love the craft so much that when you are under pressure, you still love it. Because what you're doing is allowing the pressure, economic pressure, to enter your studio. And so, like I said, when I was a musician, I had no interest in making money off of music. I did not want that pressure on my creative practice at that time. I wanted to make music when I felt inspired, not because I needed to pay bills. With clay, I feel a lot differently. I love it so much that I don't mind that there's external pressure coming from the economic reality of life. I love making pottery so much that I'm willing to kind of let my studio practice be influenced by those external pressures. And it's not a problem for me. And so that is something that you need to decide for yourself. If you don't like the idea of working under that type of pressure at times, you might want to look at teaching. That is a popular, common thing that people do to supplement their studio practice. Or just a hybrid approach. And I'll get into that later. So the important thing to know about me starting off is that I did not start off with a business plan. A lot of people ask me if I started off with a business plan, because that is something that people are instructed to do, and that is something that I did not do. I basically started with an open mind, and I just started making my work. And actually, I was making and producing work for years before I started selling it. And mostly what I would do with it is give it away. I would give it to my friends, I would give it to my family, I would use it. So I was already rolling with production, I want to say, before I started making a living from it. And I think that what a lot of people do is the reverse, where they start creating a business idea before they're actually producing the work. And that is okay. But I think that the action needs to come before the idea for it to be a practical endeavor. I did start off part-time. So I didn't just start off making pottery and, creating my living from that. Like I said, was working service industry. I was teaching part-time. I am dedicated to remaining small. I want to make that point really clear because a lot of people, it's confusing nowadays. As a potter, I consider myself um, an artist and a craftsperson. I do not consider myself a manufacturer. I think that with people who make functional items, there is a way that we can get confused about what our role is in society, and our role is as a professional. And I see people getting pushed into thinking that they need to be producing quantity as if they're a manufacturer and producing quantity at a low price. And that pressure comes from thinking of ourselves as if we are a retailer. I'm not quite sure exactly what shops that you guys have, but in terms of the US, we have places like Target and Walmart. And I hear a lot of younger potters who are entering the field comparing what they make to what a big box store such as Target or Walmart might make. And that is the wrong move. We're doing something that is quite different from that. We are making small batches of work in an unhurried pace as a mode of self-expression. And that self-expression is what makes us different and what sets our work apart from manufactured work. And so part of me remaining small and dedicating my practice to remaining small is just remembering that I'm different from Target. I'm one person. I consider myself an artist and a craftswoman, not a manufacturer. I also have anti-corporate ideals that inform my decision making and that have prevented me from collaborating with other bigger brands. A lot of other people, and this is just me, and you can take from this what you get. A lot of people find it to be motivating and exciting to collaborate with bigger brands. I think it makes people feel like they have reached a certain level of success. My concern is my own bottom line and protecting myself from being exploited by larger brands. I also want to say that external factors informed my trajectory just as much as planning and strategizing. So even if I had started off with a business plan, it would definitely have morphed and changed over time. We just went through a global pandemic that no one could have prepared for. And everybody I know who was a business person making their living off of their art or craft had to pivot, had to be flexible, had to shift. So if you had a business plan at that time, it would have become a completely different plan in response to a global event that was completely unpredictable. Okay, so my beginning was selling on Etsy, Etsy.com. It's a everybody is probably acquainted with it, but I will just say it's a global platform for people who make things by hand. At this point, it's much different than it was when it started. It's been bought out and it's changed a lot over the years. Now there are a lot of people on Etsy who do not make their own work, but it still remains one of the biggest platforms for makers. The benefit of selling through Etsy is that if you don't have your own website, don't have the capability of making your own website, and want things to be simple, it's a very easy way to get involved with online selling. It's an easy way to start. And I do recommend it for people who are just getting started. They make it really easy and seamless to figure out shipping and all different things like that. The downside of it is it's become increasingly expensive. So they take a higher and higher percentage of your work over time. So the percentage that I'm paying right now on my personal website is much lower than what Etsy would charge. But like I said, when you're just getting started and you just need the help of being able to snap photos of your work, pop them online, and easily, kind of create listings of your work online to sell, that is a good way of going about it. I guess part of the what I would say the benefit that Etsy offers is being a part of the Etsy network where people can search within Etsy for your work. If people put in pottery mug on Google, Etsy listings show up on Google, whereas they may not show up for my personal website. I also did tons of in-person events. I would say that I was probably selling half of my work online and half of my work in person. I lived in Louisiana at the time. There are a lot of music events, craft fairs, art markets that I would work in. That was the way that I put myself out there. I would set up a table like you see in the top right-hand corner. That was a pop-up that I actually did with a local nursery. So at the time I was making a lot of planters, as you can see in that photo. And I would call up a local business and say, would you like to do a collaborative event with me? I can bring people to your shop based on my social media presence, and I can sell my pots and also bring attention to the plants that you're selling. And so all of the plants that you see in those pots of mine were plants that were being sold at the nursery. And so it was a way to collaborate with a local business and kind of pool our audiences and create more business for the both of us. And I want to reiterate, during this time, I was still working part-time as a teacher, an art teacher. Most of my marketing has happened on social media. If anybody has questions or wants tips on how to navigate social media at this point, I'm happy to do that. It's a very different landscape than, one thing I want to say is that I started my social media account 10 years ago. Instagram was a very different place at that time, and Etsy was a very different platform at that time. Marketing happened a lot through in-person events. I also use an email newsletter that's attached to my personal website to keep in touch with people who are interested in my work and have purchased my work before. Collaborations, either with other potters or other businesses, has been a huge way to spread the word about what I do. Press, that is something that I haven't had a lot of control over. It's come to me in the form of a lot of local media. I have gotten some national press, but I feel like local media has been really instrumental. So when I lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the local art and culture magazines would reach out to me. Some of the photographs that you're seeing here are from local magazines, and that has actually helped with, providing me with website photography, professional photography for my website that I didn't have to pay for. Using paid ads on social media is an option. I don't use it very often, and we can talk about that later, but it is something that you can do. I always talk about soft skills. So I think there is a misconception with artists that the work will sell itself, and that is just not true. I think it is important to be able to speak to people, and I know that that is hard for people who are introverted or shy, but going to other artists' events, supporting other artists, um, just even on social media, if someone sends me a DM, always responding as much as I can. I know that sounds overwhelming to some, but always responding with thank you for sharing my work, asking questions, trying to keep in touch with people who purchase your work, always showing gratitude for people who do purchase your work, even if it's just one or two people, keeping in touch with those people because they may become well, number one, because you're probably, if someone's attracted to your work, they're attracted to a quality in you. And so that is what I found, is that people who collect my work are people I tend to have something in common with, whether it's on a creative level, whether we have similar worldviews, whether they happen to be Nigerian as well, whether it's on a spiritual level, but there's always something that we have in common. And so that is the connection that I'm trying to build. And then through that, you might also get a repeat collector out of just building that relationship. So if you have ever gotten someone to purchase your work, make that person someone that you keep in touch with. Never take that for granted. And then I think another thing that I want to say is that with the use of social media, we think that we need to be worried about getting a lot of likes and getting a lot of views. I disagree with that. I know that sounds funny because I have a lot of followers, but I make it my goal to actually speak to the few and not the many. I don't make a lot of pottery every month. And so in my mind, I'm thinking that um, and the amount of pottery I make has become disproportionate to the number of followers I have. In other words, I cannot make enough pottery to satisfy my following, and that is okay. And that's actually a benefit for the way that for my business model. And so instead of trying to please everyone by being entertaining or whatever, I am actually trying to, I don't know, how do I put it? Speak about what I really care about, and whoever that resonates with is who that resonates with, and it may not be everyone, and that's okay. So I did do retail for a while, and I would like to talk about that. I don't do it any longer, but it is a path that some people can follow. I did collaborate with retailers. The general rule with retail is that you receive 50% of every sale, but you are paid outright. And so that is why a lot of makers don't mind this arrangement. So let's say a retailer wants to buy 20 mugs for me to sell in their shop. And let's say my mugs sell for $50 a piece. So that would be what, $1,000, right? But what I would get is 500. I would get $500 right away. And then they would sell those mugs and for $50 a piece. And because they've already given me my half, then their profit is also half. And that's just how that works. As as a person who makes everything slowly by hand, I don't think that that arrangement is made for us. I think that arrangement was created for manufacturers, and that people who make things by hand are expected to kind of fit into that. And so again, I leave that up to the individual. If it sounds good to you to be able to move 20 mugs for $500, which is half of what you would normally make selling them individually, that's fine. If that works for you, if that's actually getting your bills paid and making ends meet within your studio practice, that is fine. I found over time that I was able to sell those 50 mugs for full price directly from my website to my audience. I got personally to the point where I would unload a kiln full of pots and take out all of the ones that were for retail, send those to my retailer, and then I looked at what I had left over to sell to my audience directly, whether that was through my website or in person at marketing events, and there weren't enough pots, and it didn't make sense anymore. And so I shifted from selling my pots retail to keeping all of my pottery so that I could sell it myself, making 100% of the profit instead of just 50% of the profit. Having a hybrid approach is okay. This is something that you have to actually run your numbers and figure out whether it makes sense for you or not. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of retail right now. If we want to talk about that more in detail later, we can. This is also a sheet I created based on some business advice that I got from a business consultant that we don't have to get into right now, but we can return to this if anybody is interested. But it's about how to calculate your wholesale price. So your wholesale price is that 50% that you would be making from a retailer. And you have to make sure that that wholesale price actually covers your costs. What a lot of people end up doing is charging a wholesale price that seems affordable to the retailer, but it doesn't actually cover the costs of production. And so they end up kind of spinning their wheels, producing a lot of work, but not being able to cover their bills. And so I like to talk about what it actually means to make a living. And this is me in my studio wearing one of Sana's aprons. But right now, all over the world, we are experiencing inflation. I know that my family in Nigeria is constantly experiencing inflation it's just runaway. I think that it's like 700 naira to $1 now. Just last year, it was maybe like 500 naira to $1. So inflation here in the United States, it's the same. I think we're slower to figure out what that means. But it just basically means, I mean, I hope I'm not over explaining, but that $100 today cannot buy what it did 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. It doesn't go as far as it used to. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of material cost increase. So the electric kiln that I have now that I bought in 2016 costs almost double now what it did then. A lot of the materials that I use in my glazes, like there is a glaze that I use that contains lithium carbonate, which is also the material that is used for lithium batteries in electric cars, which is a newer technology here in the United States that, Elon Musk and his Tesla, they use that. And so the cost of lithium carbonate has skyrocketed, which means that every time I buy that ingredient to make my glaze, that glaze is way more expensive than it was even 5 years ago. because of this new technology and the demand on that ingredient. And so I have to add that in to my cost as a maker. I have to add that in. Otherwise, I'm just losing. I'm just losing. And so the prices for my work have climbed in response to the increased cost of living in this country and in the world in general. And so one tip that was shared with me that I like to share with other people is that when you unload your kiln, or you have a massive work that you have produced that month, let's say. I know not everybody makes work monthly, but just for instance, let's say I have been able to produce 100 pieces of pottery that month. I mean, that's absurd. I don't do that, but let's just say, for this example, I need to look at my expenses for the month, each month, look at how much my life costs, and make that 100 pots pay for it all, because that is the cost of those pots. I can't make pots if I can't afford food and if I can't afford lights and electricity. So everything that I am spending in order to live and produce my work is the cost of those pots. So again, let's say all my bills for the month, my rent, my studio space, my electricity, my groceries, everything. Let's say that costs $3,000 a month and I make 100 pots that month. That means that those pots should be no less than $30 a piece, equaling out to $3,000. That is just a numerical example, okay? I'm just throwing out imaginary numbers, but just to kind of illustrate my point. But what it means to make a living is essentially that your work needs to cover the cost of living. And the reason I make that clear is that a lot of people like to undercharge, not that they like to, but they end up undercharging for their pots because they are afraid to charge what they're actually worth. And so I have raised my prices significantly over the last, I would say since 2020, my prices have risen significantly. And the benefits to that are that my income now matches my increased cost of living. Also, charging more per piece means that I am able to take more time with each piece and create a higher quality of work. There was a time when I was producing more work because my prices were lower, and that meant that I wasn't able to take as much time with each piece. I was doing simpler decoration styles, and I think now I'm better able to have quality control over my pieces. And so when you are charging more for your work, you get more time and to spend making higher quality work, and that then adds to the value of your work. And so it becomes worth the money. So it's kind of a nice, like closed cycle. It's a kind of cycle that makes sense. I'm also using fewer materials to make the same amount of money, which I think is actually better for the environment. So I'm using less glaze, I'm using less packing materials, I'm using less materials to make basically the same amount of money. And I talked about, responding to external shifts. So a business plan is great, but you need to be flexible in order to survive in today's world. The social media algorithm has changed so much over the years. Becoming visible on social media has become more difficult. Etsy as a sales platform has become a lot more saturated. People who started selling on Etsy 10 or 15 years ago had a different experience with it than someone who is starting their Etsy shop today. The global pandemic, as I mentioned, changed the way that we all sold. So during the pandemic, I went from selling half of my work in person to going 100% online because all of our in-person events came to a close during that time, and I had to pivot and I had to shift. The death of George Floyd I'm not sure if this made national news, but an unarmed Black man named George Floyd was murdered by the police in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 2020. And that caused a ripple in society. And during that time, people started dedicating their dollars to supporting Black owned businesses. And my social media following doubled during that time. And so I actually ended up benefiting in a very strange way from his death. And that is actually the event that was the catalyst for me starting the Cabo Collective, the Cabo Clay Collective, which Sana talked about at the beginning of this meeting, because it made me want to pay that forward. It felt to me like I had benefited from a tragedy that happened not just to George Floyd and George Floyd's family, but it happened to the entire Black community. And it made me want to pay that forward and help other Black artists and create community for other Black artists globally. But anyway, that is an external shift that happened to my business that I could never have planned for. And then also just the fact that I moved. I've moved twice since I've been a potter, and that has created just shifts that I had to respond to. And this is a picture of me teaching, because for a while that was teaching adult pottery classes and wheel throwing classes. And that was also a way that I created not only additional income, but a sense of clay community as much as I could. And another way to, talk to people about my work and community events and things like that. And these are other paths that I've discussed in the past with licensing, design, and mass production. These are all valid paths that people can take. I have not taken them, but I'm aware that other ceramicists have used them in the past. And these are things that I'm willing to discuss if people have questions about them. And that is the end of that presentation. And I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have at this time.
Thank you so much, Osa. I have a question. As a result of raising the prices in your work, have you limited an audience from being able to afford it?
Yes, but I am not concerned with everyone being able to have my work, because that's impossible. Like I said, I make small batches of work. And so not everyone can have it anyway. It's just not possible. And also there are different potters that are charging different amounts of work or different amounts of money for their work. So it's not that people won't be able to access handmade pots just because they can't have mine. There is handmade work of all different like price points that people can have. And also I gift a lot of my work. I give it away a lot. I donate it a lot as much as I can. And the thing that I try to make free actually is advice such as this. Like, I'm using my studio time right now to try to be helpful to my community.
Okay.
There's so many, just information is something that I try to make free, all of my glaze recipes, how I do things. I would rather see people making their own pots and feeling creative. I don't think that not being able to afford high-end handmade ceramics is a problem. I've been broke before, and it was never an issue the main issue in my life was never that I couldn't afford handmade pottery. So, I just know that as a Black artist, I'm interested in sustaining myself. and helping other Black artists be able to do the same thing. And it's revolutionized my life. And not only that, it's been helpful to me to be able to help other people. So having an increased income means that I can support my family better. I can share and give. I can donate more. So it's not, yeah, it's just not an issue. Yeah, it is limiting. Not everybody can afford my pottery now, and I'm okay with that because of the benefits to my life, to other people's lives. And then also there's just so much I can share outside of just the piece of pottery.
Excellent, wonderful, just wonderful. And another question, you didn't talk about who you studied with. Are you self-taught?
Okay, great. Okay, so let me talk about my background. Like I said, I started in a community class.
Okay.
And I have a sociology degree. So I don't have any formal arts training. And it was never a thought in my mind that I would identify as an artist growing up. This just kind of all happened in a kind of serendipitous way. So I did a lot of self-teaching. I used YouTube a lot. I did take classes as much as I could, but they were kind of beginner level classes where I just learned how to pull a cylinder, how to make a bowl. But actually selling my work gave me the opportunity to learn and practice. So making money from clay helped me to be able to afford more clay and more ingredients so that I could continue practicing. I wasn't the type of person that felt like I needed to be making something perfect in order to offer it to someone. I made pots that I was happy with at the time. I presented them to people. They seemed to love them. I moved those along. I got better as I went along. So actually selling work was a big part of my education, just the repetition. So as a potter, repetition and iteration is very important to my process. So being able to articulate the forms that I wanted to make came from repetition, and selling pots and being able to move them along and make more pots with the money that I was making was a huge part of my education. Who did I study with? In 2017, in 2016, I moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My husband was finishing his degree with a landscape architecture degree there. And during that time, I realized that their ceramics program was very strong. And because I didn't have a BFA, I wasn't in a position to enter an MFA program, but I could do a post-bac program. It was a 1-year program. And so I just tried, I tried to do that, to dip my toe in and see if that's what I wanted to do. I also had an inkling that academia was not the place for me to study something creative, but I wanted to give it a chance because I was looking at the work of master's degree recipients, and I just saw how much finesse there was and how much nuance there was in the work. So I knew something was going on inside academia that was interesting, but I also kind of felt that being in essentially what I would call a white supremacist and patriarchal environment for creativity wasn't what I was looking for. So I had that 1-year experience, and it was helpful in some ways, but the social environment was not supportive at all. I think it was technically helpful in certain ways, but the social environment was not joyous. And I come to pottery with a lot of joy. I love clay. That is the basis for my studio practice, is enjoying clay. And I did not find that type of joy in the program that I was exposed to, or feel that my peers were invested in each other's success. So I did complete that program, but it didn't inspire me to receive an MFA. So that was a 1-year experience. I also have attended workshops. Those are environments that I do highly recommend if you can access them. I took a workshop at a craft school called Aeromont with a woman named Jennifer Allen. And I still use so many tips and tricks and techniques that she shared. And this was a 1-week intensive, but it was jam-packed full of information and techniques. And it was in a fun and laid back and nurturing environment. And I got so much out of it. That was back in 2016, and I'm still always using so many of the techniques that she showed me through that. I've gone to different conferences here and there. I have not attended NCECA yet. This will be my first year attending NCECA, but I went to a smaller conference called Florida Heat Surface back in 2019. I've done a few short-term residencies. I was able to study with Jabulile Nala, the South African potter that I just mentioned last summer. I studied with her for 3 weeks. And right now I am in a program called Clay Cohorts. I would also write that down, Clay Cohorts. It is a brand new virtual mentorship program started by a potter called Simon Levin. And there are scholarships available, especially for people of color. So if you are interested in that, it is available globally. There is one student that's doing it who's from Brazil right now. And you can get it paid for if you fill out the application, but the cohort for this year has already started. So it would be for the cohort starting in 2024. And what that is the ability to study in a small group, just like this, online, virtually through Zoom, with a mentor. And right now I'm studying with somebody named Lisa Orr. She's located in Massachusetts. She's probably in her 60s. And she attended Alfred University for her MFA, and she's a retired professor. So it is more informal than an MFA program. And I've just started it. I've only been doing it for about 2 months. And so what I like to say is that I'm at the 10-year mark in my studio practice. And because I've had an unconventional path in this field, and because I feel like professional development is just important, I feel like I'm at a point where I have been able to teach, I have been able to lead classes. I also have tons to learn, and I probably will never stop learning. So right now I lead workshops. I also take workshops. I teach. I'm also a student. I'm about to do a workshop with David McDonald in April, but I'm also in Clay Cohorts right now. My mother was a teacher, a public school teacher, for over 30 years. Every single year she had to attend an in-service and a training. They always had to be trained up with the latest, teaching philosophies and practices in her field. And so I will never stop learning. That's just going to be a part of who I am. But I am at the 10-year mark where I feel like I'm kind of at the end of the first leg of my career, because I want to be doing this forever. So I see myself as kind of entering mid-career now. And I think that doing clay cohorts and having access to an older, more experienced ceramicist, and having a one-on-one relationship with an older, experienced ceramicist who is invested in my success is a pivotal experience for me right now. And I'm hoping that it's going to launch me into the next segment of my career.
I just wanted to make a comment. First of all, thank you, Osa, and then we'll keep going here. But I am putting links to a number of the people that you mentioned and a number of the programs and websites in the chat, and I will save the chat as well. But just so people know that they can find it in the chat if they haven't looked yet. So
I would say about clay cohorts that if you have taken a non-traditional path, if you simply can't afford an MFA, so here in the States, an MFA program can be quite cost prohibitive. So that was another part of my decision making, was that I was already making a living for myself as a ceramicist and did not want to go, you know, $50,000 to $100,000 in debt trying to earn an MFA. There are fellowships for MFA programs. I know people who have received them. I just think that wasn't the path for me. I'm not trying to discourage anyone else from doing it, but I think that clay cohorts can be another path that is either low cost or free if you can get that scholarship. You know, so it's less formal. It can be low cost or free. It's $300 a month, or if you get the scholarship, it's just paid for. Whereas, you know, so $300 a month would be like $3,600, less than $4,000 a year. Your typical MFA program, I mean, and how much is it at UF Gainesville?
Well, depending on if they're in state or out of state or out of country, but with us, we only take students that we have full
Okay.
GA, graduate assistantships. Otherwise, we don't take people. So basically, I don't want to say it's free. There's still fees and
Sure.
materials, et cetera, and they have to pay for their own housing, et cetera. But we won't take a student. And honestly, if anyone is interested in an MFA program, I wouldn't pay for it. I would make sure I went to a school. I tell my students that I've been telling them for years, don't pay for your graduate education. So if you can't get an assistantship, maybe wait a year, apply to some different places, improve your portfolio. But you shouldn't take on debt when the time comes.
I mean, it's always helpful to me to hear from people in the group. Are you selling your work? Are you planning to sell your work? What are your hopes and goals? Also, a lot of the information that I'm giving could be US specific because of the internet. A lot of this stuff is international. Like I said, Etsy is an international platform. Clay Cohorts is an international program because it's virtual. But some of the things that I've told you are US specific. And so I don't know if that's actually helpful to you. So if anybody has any questions that are specific to your experience, I'm happy to answer them.
Sam, any final words to Osa? Did we lose him? We might have lost him. There he is.
Hello.
Yeah, any final words for Osa before we all bid everyone a goodbye?
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
we can hear you, Sam.
Yeah. Okay. I'm saying, Osa, can you share some of your challenges and how you were able to overcome these challenges whilst in the US? I'm back in Ghana, and we do have some future. I see that you.
Uh-oh. You froze. Uh-oh.
Sam, are you there? I think we lost him.
Background.
Okay, you're back. You said, I see that you, and then we couldn't hear you.
Can I come back again?
Yes, you're fine.
Yeah. I said, can you share some of your challenges and how you were able to overcome these challenges? Maybe this will be very good for my students and myself, how we can overcome our challenges in this chosen field.
I mean, I honestly feel that this is what I'm meant to be doing. I just mentioned, I mean, I'm a spiritual person. I believe in God. I feel like this is what I'm meant to be doing. I told everybody that I never thought of myself as an artist. I was always a person who played music growing up, but I never was strong in the visual arts at all. Told people that I mentioned that my background is in sociology. I thought I was going to be working at an NGO. I took one pottery class and doors opened for me. So I feel like I have had a relatively easy time because this is a path that's meant for me. I would say that possibly the challenge of the global pandemic. I was doing a lot of in-person events, and I basically thought that our society was going to go into a Great Depression and that nobody would be buying ceramics during that time. But it turned out to be quite the opposite. Who would have guessed that online sales in the United States would go up during a time when there was so much fear and uncertainty? Also during that time, the George Floyd thing happened, which was a tragedy that ended up benefiting my business practice. So that's why I'm saying that it would help for me to hear what people's specific challenges are so that I can speak to them, because I feel like I've had an unusually blessed path. And things have built for me over time in a way that was very organic. I think possibly some of the challenges that I've met have been just the fact of existing in isolation so much, but those challenges have been met by things like this, virtual opportunities to be able to reach out to people who aren't in my immediate area. So another barrier for the MFA program for me was I'm married and I'm a homeowner. And so I can't just move to Illinois or Montana or wherever that fellowship exists. I have a whole life here. Anne was saying, well, just wait until that opportunity arises, but I cannot just move across the country and leave my whole life behind. So all of these virtual opportunities have removed barriers for someone like me to continue my education.
Okay.
But like I said, I would love to hear what it is you're experiencing. My experience here may or may not parallel what you all are dealing with. And so I would love to hear what it is that creates barriers so that we can speak to those challenges specifically.
Yeah. Well, I realized that you use a lot of technology to brand your and using website and stuff like that. I think the challenge we have here in Ghana, my part of the world, is those who do this sort of pottery actually learnt it in an informal way, and maybe have not been to school and stuff like that, so they can't leverage on these technologies to brand their work, to make people get to know their work. And then coming from my part again, let me share a story. When I was in the US and I was leaving back to Ghana, at the airport, I was really hungry. I was looking for food to buy. And when I queued to get the food, they said I can't pay with cash. And because I don't live in the US, I didn't have a card. And I had to travel close to 24 hours without food. I just getting food maybe on the plane, which I actually did not like. In Ghana, it's the opposite, where in the US, you can purchase and pay online, Uber. It's the opposite. We deal more with cash. So it's difficult for these porters to have people buying online and maybe shipping and stuff like that. I think these are some of the challenges. So what we are doing is that with the help of this group we've created, we are looking at how we can also zero into these traditional porters and then leverage on technology so we can bring their works more accessible to the public. Otherwise, if you need it, you have to drive all the way to that place to get it. These are some of the challenges in my part of the world, because I know maybe in the US, You can sell it from the big shops, or you can even buy it online, and maybe you have to ship it or package it and send it to the address. We do not have those address system such as 360 McKnight Avenue or something like. We do not have that. So the terrain are not the same.
Exactly.
The terrain are not the same. Yeah, it appears the terrain are not the same.
Okay. Well, what I can say is, so for the South African potter, Jabu, that I'm working with, I actually, she's facing exactly what you're facing. The lack of a website, right?
Yeah.
I just created a website for her. Can I share it with you really quickly?
Okay.
And this is something here. I just created a website for her. Can you see this?
Yes, new work coming soon. Jabu Lily.
Yes.
Nala.
Yes. So she's in Durban, South Africa.
Okay.
And what she has been doing to make ends meet, this is a book that actually just came out about her that you guys can look up if you want to. But she has been selling all of her work in person. The way that she has coped with that is by getting a visa to come here and do events. She has actually gone without seeing her family for up to a year while she's here in the United States working and selling her works in person. But that has become increasingly cost prohibitive because, like I said, everything is becoming more expensive these days, right? Shipping is more expensive. The plane ticket is more expensive. Everything's more expensive now. So I'm trying to figure out a way for her to sell at home by working online, selling her pots online. And so we are working on that currently. The way that she is able to make that work is that she has a shipping service there. Okay. So there is a way. Now, every country is different. Nigeria is different from Ghana, which is different from South Africa. Every place has their own, thing. In South Africa, a big problem for us coordinating is load sharing. They do not have power all the time. Nigeria is even worse. They never have power. Ghana, I think I've been to Ghana only one time, really briefly. It seemed a lot more stable in that way. You know what I mean? So everybody has their own challenges. She is able to use an online or a shipping service. And that is where we are now. I'm trying to get pricing for her because a big thing has been shipping her work, the cost of shipping her own work here, basically shipping it to herself so she can sell it. And I'm telling her that I have never paid to ship my own work. I don't do that. I let the customer pay. That is one thing that's great about selling direct to customer is that they also pay for the shipping. So if my mug is $50, shipping is $15. The customer pays $65. I am not paying that $15. So I would like her to get to a point where she has eliminated paying for her own shipping, because that is thousands of dollars that she pays for in shipping pots to herself here in the States so that she can then sell them again. And then not only that, she's paying a tabling fee. She's paying all of these fees. So at this point, if you can make online work, that is the way to go. I would love for the collective to offer this service. I just don't know how that's going to work yet. I did this for her for free. And that's when Sana's asking me, well, what about, your pots, and they're expensive and not everybody can access them. Well, the fact that I charge a certain amount for my pots enables me the free time to be able to do this type of volunteer work for people. You know what I mean? It's a lot of work. We built her an entire website. We got photographs taken when she was here last summer. So this is a service that I would love for our collective to be able to provide, is website design. It is not as hard as it used to be. This is a template that I use a platform called Wix, Wix.com. They have templates. All you have to do is fill in take the pictures or photographs that you have and put them on the website. The format of the website has already been designed. They make it very easy for you to build your own website these days. So it's getting to a point where it's going to be easier and easier and easier. Nigeria is also, I don't know if you've heard the news, but there is no cash in Nigeria right now. When I send my family money there, they cannot pick up cash right now. There is no cash flow in Nigeria right now, which is a society that only uses cash. And they're talking about making it a cashless society, which is absurd because they are a country that only uses cash. And I know you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of hurdles that we're going to have to overcome, but I have a feeling that online commerce is going to be more accessible to everyone shortly. It's coming to you guys. If I can make this website for Jabu, I know I can do it for other people in Ghana. There's just certain logistics that we have to figure out, but we can make it happen. We just need to stay in touch. Again, I would like to make my contact information available. I don't have the time to be able to create a website for everyone, but it is a goal to be able to create some type of program because every United States potter, almost all of us have a website because it's become a lot more accessible for us to do that. A lot of people know how to do this now. Anyone who's in this chat who's older than me can remember a time when you had to actually know HTML. You had to know code in order to make a website. It is not like that anymore. It has become a lot more accessible. And so now, and also I want to say that this website, I'm paying maybe like $29 a month to host it. It's not expensive for us. If you're selling your work, that will be a minor cost. If you have income that you're generating through pottery, that cost will be minor, especially when you compare it to shipping and all these other things that people end up paying for. So
Sam, maybe we could see about someone doing a little kind of workshop-y thing for the group on how to set up a simple website or something. I'll do a little digging to see if there's someone that might be able to do that for us. Just not so much that they would actually be able to create it at the moment, but where they get an understanding of what it might involve.
Yes.
I just put my email address in the chat.
Okay, great.
Yeah, please keep in touch with me about this. So let me just explain about Kabo. It's a word, it's a Yoruba word, it means welcome. So it's just about anyone is welcome. It's for everybody. There have been organizations that claim to represent people of color in ceramics, but the organizations seem closed. It's difficult to figure out how to become involved in them. And so I wanted to create an organization that is literally open to everyone. You can go to the website, Cabo Clay Collective.
I've already put it in the chat. So it's,
thank you, Anna. You can go to that website, you can add yourself to the directory so that people know that you exist globally. We have people in Europe, we have people in Nigeria. We don't have too many Ghanaians there yet, but please add yourself to the directory. It's a way for us to connect and come together. There's also an online forum, a discussion forum. One of those points of discussion is that I have recently discovered that Nigerian ceramicists do not have access to glaze materials. And so that is a barrier that they're facing when it comes to obviously glazing their pottery. And we are trying to work out ways to be allied with them and send them some of these materials that they cannot access there because they don't have clay supply warehouses in the same way that we do, okay? So but the thing that I want to explain is that we started off in 2021 with absolutely no funds. So we are a very new organization and we had no resources. We were just there to foster community and connection. We have slowly just started getting funding for our organization. And I'm in the process now of securing official nonprofit status through the state and through the federal government. So we are set to become a 501c3, hopefully by this spring.
Osa,
Yes, Miss Winnie.
okay. I just wanted to let you know that I was able, for 5 years, I tried to find a shipper to ship the traditional pots out of Ghana. And I found a man, we shipped 40 pots. It cost me under $1,000. And I was supposed to sell them for the women during, when Antigua was in Virginia, but that didn't happen. And I can't come this time, but next year. But if you want to call me, I can tell you how I did that, because it just took me forever to do it, but it's done now.
See? So there we go. Thank you so much. So that is a missing piece. It's all coming together. So what needs to happen is we all need this information. We can make it public. I mean, if you can put anything, any names in the chat right now, Ms. Owens, if you could do that. But just to share this information, because that is just the missing piece. So how it would work is once we post Jabu Nala's pots online, a shipping fee will be included. Let's say her pot is $100. Let's say the shipping is $20. A customer will pay $120 to her, and then she will go ahead and pay that $20. Jabu will take that $20 shipping and pay the shipping company. And they will take care of that shipping for her. And the shipping costs will be paid by the person, the collector, the person who purchased that pot.
Okay, right now what I'm doing is I've been building a building for the last couple of years. It's a tutoring retail center. And I told the women they had to be an organization. So now they're the Cooley Pottery Association. And so it's in its infant stages, but what my vision is that this tutoring / retail center will help the students who are getting low grades and then not able to continue their education. It'll help that with having tutors. And then the retail, the women will put their pots that they sell every week in the building. So, and I told them, do not raise your prices for your customers here, because I don't know how long this process is going to take, because we're not we're not a nonprofit. But anyway, it's going to work. And what will happen, the pots that are sold online, a percentage of it goes to a fund. And the fund is to give tuition to one young lady who wants, or I guess guy, but right now we're kind of concentrating on the women, and that portion will allow them to pay their tuition when all the women give like maybe 10% or something to that extent. So it's in its infant stages, but it's been a long time that I've been working on this. I've been in that village for 10 years, and I just by luck, I found this shipper.
And where are most of you located? Are you in Accra?
Oh, no.
No, I'm talking about everybody else. Because you're in a rural area, so I'm wondering if that will apply to people who are in the city.
Well, you have to do everything in the city eventually. That's where I had to go to pack.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Ship them. But I live in Volta region.
Are you guys shipping, or when you talk about shipping, are you shipping by air or Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
When I first started, I went to I was going to say Pan Am, but that's so not happening. Maybe United. And for one pot, they wanted $2,000, one pot. So, for years, I've been looking for another way, and somebody just happened to mention this man. And we went to his house on a truck. We rented a truck, took the pots down to his house. We all wrapped them, gave us lunch, and I gave him the money. It was under $1,000 for 40 pots. Nothing broke. So that's
And these are low fire. These are low fire pots.
Yeah, traditional.
That's impressive. Another thing I want to say is piggybacking off of what you are saying. A collective website might be a nice solution. So if the group of people that are in this chat right now want to have one website with one shop that you can all link to together, that will drive more eyes to this one place. Instead of going through the work of building everybody's separate website, let's be communal. Let's be a collective. Let's work together. There's no room or need for competition. It's actually probably going to be to the benefit of everybody. If you create a collective name, whatever it is, and maybe 5 different artists can sell from one website to streamline things. Now, the issue with that is going to be the bank account that the money lands in. Okay. You're going to have to keep track of whose money is what. That would be the one complication with working that way. But in terms of getting a website built and an online platform, that might be helpful. I mean, Ms. Owens, you are doing this. You are doing a collective sale for many artists through one website. How does the money part work?
We haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I know that in order for that, they had to become an organization. That's why we named it the Cooley Pottery Association. The next is to open up the bank account with 3 people on it. But there's a little problem there because they just had a new election. And the people who would have been on that website, on that bank account, are no longer officers. So that's got to be worked out. And, you know, culturally, it has to be worked out because I can't just come in and tell them, do this, do this, do this. You know, they have to agree. And then they tell me what they want. What, you know, do they want it this way, or how are we going to do this? So that part is in the beginning stages. So if anybody has any, Sam, I don't know if you could help out. I'm going to be coming your way, unfortunately, the second week in April, and I think the students will not be there.
Yeah, they'll be there.
Will. Okay, great. Okay,
Yeah.
then I'll come then.
Yeah.
So was that helpful at all? I think it's just going to take us keeping in touch. This almost seems like a collective initiative on our part that we need to build up. We need to figure out funding for it, because on our end, me asking other potters to build websites for our brothers and sisters in Ghana or South Africa, that has also worked for us. So I need to figure out a way to compensate US people to do this type of work. Do you know what I mean? Because we're all running around like chickens with no heads here trying to pay all these bills too. So it's going to be something that we need funding for. And then we need a way to, I think Zoom is a great way for us to kind of collaborate and be able to help with that, because it's something I'm already doing personally. It's just not a formal part of the organization yet. But what I'm trying to explain is that we are just getting started. We are just now getting funding, and we are just now figuring out what our initiatives need to be. And as somebody who is a first generation Nigerian American, it's important for me to be in touch with Africans and to make this work benefit other African people. So please keep in touch with me, because I think this is something that it's a practical thing that we can solve. We're already doing it. It just needs to be formalized.
Osa, our group, which includes a couple people that aren't on Zoom today with you, meet once a month to set up these presentations, and there's other things and other events that we're trying to work on. So I can include you in our. It's like about 6 of us. So we're not talking big organization, but I could certainly include you in that group. And then, you know, when it's convenient for you, if you'd like to join us, I'll send agendas and all that kind of stuff ahead.
Sure, please do.
Okay, great.
But I'm just saying people in this group, please keep in touch with me. This is an initiative that is important to me personally, and I would like to see it actually come to fruition, not just talk about it.